Mic check. Hello, guys. Welcome back. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Welcome to the learning session. Um, we are going to be diving into some photoshopping. All right. All right, we're going to mash gas as we begin because I'm going to try to let these sessions be as quick as we can. Yeah, okay. Get this one. 2020. There we go. Yeah. All right, you guys see my screen okay? Oh, well, I need to make it bigger. There we go. Okay, so welcome to some photoshopping, and this is Nate. Right? Ah, man. Every year I do this, I feel older because he's 14 now. But in any case, what are some of the differences you notice with this shot? Anybody?
Sir, the exposure is lowered for the sky in the background.
All right, this.
Sir,
Okay, I
the
give you a
sky,
half point for that. Yeah, man, go ahead.
the
What
sky,
else?
the sky is completely different, and the photo on
Ah,
the right is extended. As you can see that there's hay on the left side in the right photo. When you can see like a slight road on the in the left photo on the left side.
yeah, watch out for you, Khalifa. You look like you're ready to blackmail people with Photoshop, right?
Sir, I'm a photographer.
All right, so that's a good eye, right? Also, what else? Somebody else give me another one. Come on, there's still one more to catch. Who can catch it first? And it's not even hidden. Why don't I see that?
Right, so the boy up.
The what?
Seems to be bigger, sir.
What is bigger?
The boy on the right.
Okay, yeah. I give you one for that. I mean, the picture, the ratio of the picture, you still get away with a little bit of that. Maybe I could give this one away with the fact that the sky is changed, but the light post is actually gone and the light wire, right? So, enhancing pictures, one of the primary uses of Photoshop. And I mean, this has just totally exploded with AI. And one might say, why do I need to learn Photoshop if I can just prompt the AI to remove the clouds? I mean, the truth, I'll tell you the secret about AI, guys. The secret is that if you use AI without human intervention 100%, the people who use AI and human intervention will still be ahead, right? So you still need to know how to use Photoshop, even though your work in Photoshop can be significantly reduced with AI. You can just say, hey, I want you to remove the light wire at the top. But if you don't know how to remove it in the first place, then when it remove it, but it don't remove it properly, you're going to be stuck. You know what I mean, guys? Right? So We're still going to be learning Photoshop nonetheless, and we're still going to be identifying the primary uses. And then as you guys get more advanced, you're going to add AI to the fact that you already know Photoshop, and then you'll be superhumans, right? So yes, enhancing photos. Photoshop can also be used to do photo montage, right? So the image below is a 3D image. The image in the background is actually a merge between these two images. So you can merge images together in Photoshop as well. Photoshop can be used to correct images. So the image on the right is how an image usually looks when you're on the ground and you snap a picture. And the image on the left is using Photoshop to kind of straighten the image, right? I don't know if you guys can see that. Perhaps one of the key things in architecture, because we deal with a lot of straight lines, it's very easy for buildings to look crooked because of the lens and how lenses work, but you can use Photoshop to also straighten those as well. You can also use Photoshop to, let's just call it, enhance reality. And we're going to be doing some of that today, right? Who can point out to me some of the things that are added to this image?
Sir,
The
there's
rain.
All right, the rain is what?
additional foliage.
The what?
I was saying additional foliage to the bottom left.
Cool, cool. Some foreground foliage. Nice, nice. What else?
Entourage.
Yeah, well, foliage took that cake away.
Um,
What else?
the sky, and if you look really close in the foreground at the right bottom corner, it looks like you're taking the picture from the side of a car slightly. I don't know if that was the aim, but that's what it looks like to me. And then um
So
around the
some
edges,
water effects, right?
yeah. And then around the edges, you can see that it was darkened, like on the sides mostly.
All
I
right,
don't
all
remember
right,
what
all
it's
right, all
called,
right.
but
No more from Leslie. No more. You already get 2. Leave some for Jason. What else, Jason? Jason here? Waiting on Jason, finding the mute button. Remember, guys, you can also message me if you can't find the mute button. All right. What about Shamario?
Yes, sir. So, sir, I noticed that the weather, though the rain is also there, the weather content has changed, and the light that is not in the image before is also in the image now, sir.
Ah, you catch the light. Yeah, man, exactly. So there's a light there. Now, if I should ask Angie, does the image on the right seem believable? Oh wait, somebody hand was up.
No.
Good point. What Catherine?
Shanik, sir, raising
Okay,
the same
Shani.
device. I was going to mention that the palm tree is gone out of the left corner of the image.
Yes, good catch. So Shanik, why doesn't the image on the right look real?
I would say how intense the shadow on the building is in comparison to the light, especially for it being moonlight. And then the rain, and the man looks dry. To be quite frank, he looks dry.
Even though I'm trying to put something over his head, right? And guys, look, the truth is that deep down in your brain, in your gut, you know the image on the right isn't real. Even though nowadays with AI images, you have to really, really, really look good, right? But The general idea is that it is hard. You guys have had years of training of what is real and what is not subconsciously. Like you can know that something is fake. Even if I ask you how you know it's fake, you'll be like, I don't know. It's like it don't look real. It don't like the rain don't look like the guy is dry. The truth is that those are reasons, but there are
Sir,
many more reasons. Yeah, go ahead.
I just feel like that was a poor attempt. Like they made it very obvious. No, seriously, seriously, because just look at that man. Even if the picture on the left wasn't there, that man looks
Mhm.
so out of place, like he's not supposed to be there.
And that is true. And for the purpose of just understanding the different components of Photoshop, that is the purpose really of this montage image that is here, because you really have to try really hard to make something believable. Reality is way more complex than we realize. However, communication is one of the key things with architecture. So even if I look here, this is that file. If I wanted to communicate the fact that it's raining, fine, that's communicated, it's raining. If the objective is to trick somebody that it was raining by letting them believe, then that is a whole different level of believability, right? So we're not going to go to that extreme here in this module. Like, we're not going to try to go like ultra real where you can't distinguish reality from fiction. We are primarily just going to understand the fundamentals of communicating and the tools that we use. So for example, the ability to do things like add and turn off layers, like what you see me doing here now, right? Even if the layers are not believable, like how do I, where is it? This guy, right. How do I add multiple layers and add different effects to turn an image like this into a rainy day? Even if the rainy day is not ultra believable, it is communicated. And that's the thing in architecture, guys. Most of what we try to do in architecture is try to communicate something. Try to communicate that this is a green area, this is a soft image, this is an important entry, things like that, even though it's not real. Like, sometimes you look at some interesting montages and you know that it's not real, but it communicates the idea, right? All right, let's go quickly. 718. So we can keep going. We'll also use it for enhancing visualizations, changing the sky. This is a rendered image. Adjusting the contrast. This one is really nice. This one is a full-on montage. I have the editable file from this. This one I didn't create, but I just want to show you just how crazy you can get in terms of doing a montage in Photoshop. Like, if I bring these layers out here, you will see there's a lot of different layers here. And I don't know if you can see as I turn everything off, right? Everything from the grass, I go all the way down, everything from the grass to the trees. Every one of this is a photo. And this is a form of photo montaging by you using PNG pictures of trees, of grass, cutting them together and pasting them. And at the very base of this image is a rendered shot, like from Lumion or Twinmotion. And there we have it. That is all that comes from the program, guys, right? Which is just a rendered shot. Everything else is added as individual images. So this is one way that you can do a photo montage In architecture, though, we tend to do all of this in a 3D application. So rather than, for example, adding a picture of an ocean here, right? So this is a picture of an ocean. Rather than adding that, we actually add a material in a 3D environment and let it generate the picture of the ocean. Because in order for you to put something like this together, you will have to have thousands of different images of trees, water, plants, find it at the right angle and all of that stuff. So we're going to do a little bit of photo montaging, but not this extreme, so you don't need to be scared that we're going to go that extreme, right, guys? Right. So I want us to dive down into knowing a little bit about the interface of Photoshop. So I want you guys to follow to jump into Photoshop right now and follow along. No, it don't. I'm going to be doing this with, I think it's 2021. Even if you don't have that version, you can still follow along, guys. All right. Now, if you get kind of left behind, don't worry about it. We'll have the video that you can go back to, right? I can pause and answer questions, but I want to try to keep these sessions as short as possible. Because they're going to be working sessions, right? And it makes it easier when you guys are looking back on the video as we go on.
Okay.
All right, so let's get going.
Okay, guys, so let's take a look on Photoshop. So we're going to open Photoshop now. Now, I'm using version 2020, but it doesn't matter which version you use. Most of the techniques for using the user interface can apply across all versions. All right, so you're going to fire up Photoshop now. So some of you, when you open Photoshop, you will notice that you get a kind of a welcome screen, and sometimes it might carry you directly onto the work page that has your artboard. So it doesn't really matter. If it carries you to a welcome screen, what is really showing you is some of the projects that you were working on. So these are actually some projects that I was working on. You're going to go to create new document. That's located over here. All right, now when you click that, you're going to notice that it comes up with a window. Now this might look different, as I said, depending on which Photoshop version you're using, but you should notice the same ideas here. You should see the name, which is the name of the file, the document type, so that's selecting whether or not it's going to be on paper or it's going to be a web document. You're also going to choose your resolution. Now, for our purposes, just getting used to the interface, what we're going to do is we're going to just choose US paper. We're going to leave it on letter size, and we're going to leave everything as default here. And we're going to choose OK. Now when you do that, this is what you might see. Now the first thing to notice is your Photoshop layout might not look like my layout, and for those of you who maybe are used to a certain version of Photoshop, you might notice that, hey, okay, this other version looks different than what I'm used to. So the first thing that we're going to do is kind of just demystify why they all look different, because at its foundation all of them are pretty much the same layout. As a matter of fact, Photoshop hasn't really changed for over the last 20 years. It's gotten more fancy and it has a black theme, but the basic ideas are the same, right? You have your major zones. On this side here, we have our panels, and on this side here, we have our tools, and at the top here, it's all the way up here, we have our control panel and our menu, our drop-down menus up top. So that's pretty much the 3 default zones that you get. Now, for some of us who might be saying, whoa, these are a lot of buttons. What do these buttons do? Now, the great thing about this tutorial is that we're going to kind of learn Photoshop in less than an hour, right? So we're not going to learn what every button does, but we're going to learn how to learn what the buttons do. So let's start with a broad brush, right? Now, on this side here, let's think of these tools as our general tools. What do I mean by general tools? Well, think about tools, something like perhaps this. I mean, this is a scissors. We might find this in most our homes. So this is a general tool that that we might have in any typical home. Maybe like a hammer. Give me another general tool. How about I don't know, you could take any one of these. Pliers, screwdrivers. These are all tools that you will see generally around the house. Any typical person would have. Now, the idea is that on this side, you might find that we have some icons here. We may not know what these icons do, but you can feel safe and assured in knowing that they're general icons that's going to be used throughout whatever we're working on in Photoshop. Now, on the other side now, what we have over here are specific tools. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, tools that you don't normally find in the typical home. For example, this. I mean, it's not a typical knife, it's a surgical knife. You wouldn't find the average Joe using a surgical knife to cut bread or to open a screwdriver. It is very specific. These tools, like what a dentist would use, it's very specific. It's used to clean teeth. It's not a general tool like a hammer that can have multiple purposes, right? You know, maybe this, and we might say, okay, I don't even know what that is. Some of us might say, okay, that's definitely a specific tool used to do something specific, and I have no idea what it is. Now, in this case, this is something that's used to do tattoos, right? So maybe if you're a tattoo artist, you would recognize, hey, I know that that's a tool that you use to do tattoos. But chances are all of us would recognize that that is a scissors. So you can kind of think of these tools, or rather this zone, for the specific tools, right? You use them to do specific things depending on what you want to do. Our analogy, we had a surgical knife, so if we want to perform surgery, well, that tool will be on this side. Maybe we want to build a tattoo design, well, that tool will also be on this side. But maybe you just want to cut a piece of paper, well, you would find that tool on this side. So these are the default setup for the different zones, right? You have the general tools on this side and the specific tools over here. Now, the thing is, what you have in the center up top is, think of it as your options. That applies to your program, to your entire program. All right, and we're going to look into that. We're going to get a bit more into specifics as we go along. So now that we know what the zones are, what about the zone that's right in front of us? What are we looking on here? Well, this is known as our canvas, right? This is where the magic happens. And you can manipulate your canvas by using the mouse wheel, holding down Alt and using the mouse wheel to zoom, and holding spacebar and left clicking to pan. Now in this case, I don't need to pan because I'm seeing all of the paper, but if I zoom in, then I might need to pan around like this. All right, and what I'm doing now, I'm holding spacebar and left click, which is normal click. Now once I hold spacebar, notice that my cursor changes to the little hand that you see here. So that means I'm now in pan mode. And when I click and hold, I can be able to move this around. So that's pretty much how you get to move around. You're pretty much going to be holding Alt to zoom and holding pan to pan around. All right. Now I also want to highlight this section down here at the bottom of our screens, right?
Right, so that is going to be space bar to pan around. So if you hold space bar while moving, that is how you pan the image left, right, up and down. Basically sliding the paper around. All right, guys. Alt mouse wheel to zoom, space bar, and left click to pan. Those are going to be your best friends if you're using Photoshop for the first time. All right.
That's the percentage there. Additionally, we see some numbers here, and we're going to get.
And most of the numbers that you see at the lower left side of your screen represents how far you zoomed in, how large the image size is. Basically, status updates of what's happening with Photoshop.
What size are you relative to the actual size of the paper, right? Basically telling you how much you're zoomed in and zoom out. Now it does give a little bit more information than that, but we're gonna discover that as we go along. Usually in an application, the bar at the bottom down here normally displays status, things like the amount of RAM, things that have to do with your zoom and your view and all of that stuff. That's normally displayed down the bottom section here. Now what we're going to do now is kind of explore the interface a bit. So I want you guys to follow along as we try to learn a bit more about the interface. Now if you have messed anything up, I want you to now go to or even if you haven't messed anything up or moved anything around, just to make sure we're all starting from zero, I want us to go to Window. This is for everybody, and I want you to go to Workspace, and we're going to go to Reset Essentials, right? And what this is a type of workspace layout for all the icons and all of that. And what it's going to do is reset it to the default, right? So this is the default for my version of Photoshop. Now I want you guys to follow very carefully, because what we're going to do is manipulate the user interface, and while we're doing that, we're going to learn some tips about Photoshop. Now if you look closely on your right hand side, now this side, remember, houses all the specific tools. Now notice you have some tabs here. You can move these tabs around. There are going to be quite a lot of buttons. If we look down here, we can see all of these buttons and areas to type in, and we might be saying, okay, what in the world are all of these buttons for? Now before we even start to investigate what they're for, what I want you guys to do, I want you guys to follow me, to just kind of get a feel of how this interface interacts. I want you to highlight, let's choose one of the tabs. I'm going to choose color, and I'm going to click left click, which is normal click, and hold on the color button, and I'm going to drag that out like that. I'm going to do the same for swatches. I'm going to drag that out. Now you may not have some of these tabs open, but you will have tabs on this side of your screen.
Now what I want you guys to look out for is when I'm moving the mouse on my screen, sometimes when I zoom in, it's not hovering over the exact button that I'm talking about. And that's just because of the Windows zoom. It just kind of messes up the mouse pointer a little bit. So you might notice that my mouse is on the right, but I'm highlighting something on the left, and that happens every time I zoom in. So just ignore that as we go on. All right.
Crowded, but don't worry about it. I want you to just drag all of these guys out. Here I have, now in some cases you might have a button that's here. When you click it, you might see it expands into a tab. I want you to drag that out as well. All right. Now when you drag them out, I want you to drag them out as individual windows. So some of them might tend to join up with other windows, but I want you to drag them out as individual windows. See, I have a Learn tab here. I'm going to drag that out, make that by itself, and I have a Libraries tab. So pretty much I have now disengaged all of these tabs and they're all floating in the middle of the screen. Now, the reason I ask you to do that is I want you to notice how all of these tools are pretty much flexible. Now remember, we took all of these from the right hand side, which houses the specific tools. I remember we discussed specific tools before. There are tools that has a primary purpose. So things like what the dentist would use, and things like what you would use for a surgery, right? Things that you would use to do specific things like do a tattoo. So all of these examples here are examples of these windows that we have just dragged out, and each of these windows does a specific thing. You notice they all have different options, varying buttons and all of that. And don't worry about them too much because we won't be using every one of them. But think of this as if you were a surgeon and you are now coming into Photoshop to do a surgery. Well, you would look for all the tools that has the features that you want. So maybe you will have a scaffold tool, maybe you have some kind of cutting saw, maybe you have some kind of swab. You know, you would drag out all of the specific tools that is necessary for you to perform your surgery, using that as an analogy. So that's all these panels are, and that's what Photoshop calls them, titles them. They are panels, and there are many panels in Photoshop, definitely more than 50 panels. These are only some of the panels that starts up with Photoshop. Now, to kind of get the feel so that we can know what these panels do, I want to highlight some aspects for you. So first, let's close all of these panels that we have dragged out. And if you notice on each panel, there is an X, there is a little double arrow symbol, and there is also the name, right? So these, and there is also a menu button here. So every panel has these 4 elements. For now, I want us to close out these panels, so we're going to be clicking on the X, and we're going to be closing these guys out like that. All right.
So this stuff is the reason that this is super important is because in going forward, all or most of the Adobe apps operate in the same way. So if you understand some of the fundamental concepts I'm showing you now, when you move to Illustrator and InDesign and these other apps, you'll have an idea of how to manipulate the user interface. All right, guys? So as you see, I'm kind of going through the interface. I want you to just try and follow along to feel out the interface, especially if you're new to Photoshop. If you already know about Photoshop interface, then I mean, we can just jump straight into the exercise. But I'm just going to spend just a couple more minutes just talking about the interface to make sure everybody is on the same page. All right.
If your Photoshop had opened looking like this, you would be like, wait a minute, where are all the tools, right? But now you've discovered that, well, on the left side, it's general tools. I still don't necessarily know what these buttons do, but I know they're like the hammer, the saw, the screwdriver. And what was on the right side were specific tools that are used to do specific things. They're more precise. And I realized that I could drag them out and close them. Now, you might be saying, okay, how do I go about opening back these specific tools? Now, the specific tool that we're going to be using for this exercise, we're going to be using the color panel. And to open the color panel and all panels, you're going to go up to the window menu. And when you look in this list here now, this list is actually a listing of all the panels available to us in Photoshop. So I want us to go ahead and open the color panel by clicking that. And you're going to notice that the panel comes up. Now this is one of the panels that we had open originally, and we had closed them. And to open the panel, we would go here. Now there are many panels here. Some of them I've never even used before, but each of these panels, as I said, think of them as specific tools: the scaffold, the welding rod, the surgery tool, the dentist tool. That's what these are, right? And if you do particular types of work in Photoshop, then you might be used to your particular tools. So anyway, we have opened the color tool, and that's why you can notice that there's a little tick beside it. So that's how you know that the color tool is open. Now when we open the color tool, I want us just to understand how panels work. So before, remember we said that we realized that the panel has a title. You're able to close the panel, you can minimize the panel, and then each panel has their own panel options, right? Now the actual panel now is where the meat of the matter is for this particular tool. So for example, if we took up that tool that the tattoo artist uses, well, all of the buttons and knobs located on his tool will be located in this space here, right? And in this case, this panel is called the color panel, and it has its features. And what it does, it allows you to change the color of whatever you're working on. Now, I can resize that tool, make it smaller, and I can also minimize it. Now when I minimize it, it turns into a little button that I can expand. When I click it, it expands again, and I can even minimize it all the way down to an actual icon, right? Let's maximize that again. All right, great. So now we understand how panels work. Now I want us to open another panel. Let's go to Window, and we're going to open the Layers panel. That's what layers look like there. I also want you to open, let's go again. We want you to open the History panel. And let's go again and open the Swatches panel. Now, if you had pulled apart your panels earlier, then when you open them back, they will still be apart, right? So some of you might open panels and they might be together like this, where you see Swatches and History together. Well, you just need to pull them apart. Now the idea is that these are the panels we want to use to do this activity. So we're only going to use these for now. Now I want us to arrange it in a particular way, right? Let's give you a recommended way. So layers are going to show you lists of layers here. So you're probably going to want this panel to be long. As a matter of fact, I want us to just dock them side by side. So I'm just going to dock this here. I'm going to dock that there. And I'm going to dock Swatches there. So now I have my own little custom panel dock right here. And what I want us to do is we're going to go to Window, Workspace, and we're going to go to New Workspace. And we're going to call this DDM. At least that's what I'm going to call it. So now when I come back to my Photoshop, if somebody else was using my computer, and this was common in the computer labs, you might be used to your panels a certain way, and then you come back and then it's all over the place. Well, you can just go back and load your workspace settings right here. Right here it is, DDM. Okay, great. So now we kind of understand a little bit of where things are zoned and how to manipulate panels. Now I wanted to share some basic fundamentals of Photoshop, right? And in doing so, these are the main panels that we're going to use. Now, up until this point, I expect everybody to have a page open. That's going to be letter size. And they should have these panels open, only these panels. All right. And at this point, I'm going to actually save this file so I don't lose it in case because we're in the middle of this activity. So I'm going to save it to my desktop and I'm going to call it. Alright.
Welcome to Access Asia.
When you're saving a Photoshop file, the default file type is PSD, right? If I click this drop down list here, I can see that I have many other file formats, including, we probably are used to things like JPEG and PNG and TIFF. But we're going to save this file as a Photoshop file, which is a file native to Photoshop, meaning you need Photoshop in order to open it. If we save it as another file type, we might end up losing some of the editable abilities. So we're going to name the file and we're going to save it there. And now the file is saved. Okay, so now we're going to tackle
Mic check. Mic check. You guys can hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right, good. All right, so we just kind of run through a little bit of the features of Photoshop, right? And as I say, we're going to keep this session moving because I don't want to keep you guys here too long. And of course, we have summaries and videos that we can watch. So for those of you who might be new to Photoshop, that is just kind of explaining to you that, hey, the interface is completely malleable. And you guys need to form an understanding of how this works because every Adobe program works pretty much the same way. The way that you can go to window, open new windows, join different panels together. This concept is used across all of the Photoshop, all of the Adobe apps. So we're not going to revisit that concept again. We're just going to dive straight into the exercises. Now I want to pull up something regarding
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was unable to get a botched version of Photoshop, but I have two applications, being Affinity Design 2 and Critter. Critter functions just like Adobe Illustrator, and Affinity Design functions basically just like Photoshop with a little bit of Illustrator design functions, tools in it. And I'm wondering if I'll be able to do the assignment with it. But if I have to submit it as a Photoshop file, if I could just convert it and submit it as such on somebody else's laptop.
That is a good question.
Yeah.
At least for this module and at least the first 2 years of CSA, it is going to be not the first 2 years. First 2 years of computing, it's going to be software specific. Yeah, we're going to start to free up a little bit when we go further down. But the reason for that is that, for example, we're going to be using SketchUp. Some people continue using SketchUp, other people hate it like poison, you know, and they never want to see SketchUp again. But it is my job to teach 3D using SketchUp. And I know that you know SketchUp when you submit a SketchUp file to me. So it's kind of the same thing with Photoshop because, you know, it's kind of the industry standard, even though obviously there are other apps.
I'm here looking at all of the tools. I've been through this back and front, and all the tools that I've seen in the video, it's the exact same layout and the exact same tools. The icon might be similar, might be different, and the name might be different, but it does the exact same thing.
Well, I'll tell you what. For those of you that might have different software that you're going to be using, for the exercises, if you are already familiar with using Photoshop, then for the exercises you should be able to use a similar program. However, for the assignment, I do have to collect a Photoshop file. That is the one that has the higher percentage mark. So I would say try to get your hands on it further down. There are different options. You can just download a version. You can use the one in the CSA lab. Oh my goodness, it's kind of old. Not to mention that the lab probably isn't open now. You can purchasing it is another option because that way you get the latest fancy dancy version with all sorts of
that's the thing. Adobe is a subscription, so you have to renew it every year.
So you have to flip that switch on and off whenever you. I mean, pretty much we're gonna use it for.
My own is a one-time purchase, and I could put it on any Apple.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, have you talked to Mr. Campbell?
No, I haven't gotten around to finding where he is.
Man. Just send him a message. Hopefully he's not too busy. He will help you out. All right? Right. But if you need to get through the exercises quick and you're already familiar with the interface, then sure, you can use Affinity
For
you know,
the exercises, but for the higher marked assignments, you would need specifically a Photoshop
exactly. I would
file.
need specifically a Photoshop file because I'm not collecting the Photoshop file for the exercise.
Okay.
Right.
I should be able to do something with that then.
Yeah, man,
Right.
that's good. That's good. And speaking of exercises, notice that the exercises are 2% each. The course is specifically tailored that way. Harris, I see your message.
Yeah.
Oh,
Same question.
right. Okay, good. Right. So it is specifically tailored that way to only be worth 2%. And the reason for that is the course comes in soft because some persons are familiar with Photoshop, some are seeing it for the very first time, two completely different point of views. So the exercises are low risk. Because of that, it is meant for you to use the exercises to get the practice more than for you to get the grade. Because after the exercises are done, the assignment is 24%, and it is those high percentages. So the exercises I mark on the day, meaning when we finish here today, you submit it to me, I'll give you till tomorrow. But the idea is that you do it in class. Maybe if we run away, leave you in class, the video goes up a couple minutes after class. Just get it done with, because we're dealing with the exercises in class. It's not an assignment, it's not a homework. You just do it in class, you submit it, and I mark it same time, and we'll move on. Those are the exercises. In cases where persons might have issues with submitting the exercises, there is a cutoff point to collect the exercises. But just remember, guys, the exercises are there for practice. And if you do the exercises fine, you should be good to go with the assignment. All right. So we're gonna just jump right into the first exercise here. All right, here we go.
Okay, so now we're going to tackle the main exercise, and in doing so, we're going to learn how to use Photoshop at the same time. Now, let's head over to the class website.
Yeah, man, go ahead.
Yes, sir. For persons as myself who haven't quite been started with acquiring our Photoshop, but you see, we'll have an extension till tomorrow.
Yeah, man.
Could we?
That's no problem,
Okay,
right? So try and get it done if you're not able to finish it now, and just send it to me by tomorrow, because I really just mark these exercises on the spot. You know what I mean? And we just move on to the next one.
Yes, sir. Sorry about that. I actually have it, but I can't set it up. That's the thing.
Yeah, man, no problem. See, that's see if you get contact with Mr. Campbell, talk to your lab tech, talk to your schoolmates, see who can help you out, and how you can get that solved. Because remember, we only spend 2 classes in Photoshop, and then we're gone to Illustrator. 2 classes in Illustrator, and then we're gone to InDesign. 2 classes in Design, and we're gone to SketchUp. And then we're done. Yeah. So we're keeping it moving.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, man, cool.
And when you head over to the website, you're gonna head to exercise 1. You're gonna see the handout open, and exercise 1 is going to be all about enhancing environment and entourage. We're going to learn how to do a background sky replacement, and we're going to learn how to create depth and motion effects using Photoshop filters, right? So in a nutshell, what we're going to do is combine these 3 images together. We're going to take this shot of Kingston. We're going to replace the sky with a sky selection of your choice, and then we're going to place a vehicle in the scene, and the vehicle is also of your choice. Now notice that you have access to the exercise files here, and to give you an idea of what this project will look like, it is going to look something like this. So there's an entirely new sky that is now here. We have the vehicle here, and we have some interesting motion effects here. We even have some reflection going on here. So this is the kind of thing that you would use Photoshop to do. All right, so let's get going. So we're gonna have Photoshop open. Now I want you guys to follow along as we go, and if for any reason you can't follow along, you can always just pause the video, right? Okay, so what we want to first look on is how we open files in Photoshop. Now, if we, for example, download the exercise files, so if we go to the site here and we go to exercise files, it will take us to the folder that has the files that we need. Now, this is the background image that we need to use, and these files here are optional skies that we can use, and here are optional vehicles that we can use as well in the scene. It's up to you. So the first thing we're going to do is download these files. Now, once the files are downloaded, you will know that you will see that they pop up in the location that you have downloaded them to. So in my case, I have these files here. Now, I want to talk a little bit about opening files in Photoshop. Now, you could drag the file into Photoshop. That's one popular way. And release. That is what would happen there. Now I'm gonna hit cancel because that's not how I would necessarily want you guys to practice to open Photoshop files. The proper way that I would want you to do it is you would go to file, then you would go to place linked. Some of you might be using a version of Photoshop that just has the word place and not place linked. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to click place linked. Then it's going to ask me to browse for the file. So in this case, I'm going to go to the location of my files, which is here. And I'm going to click this and then it will be placed. Now, you realize that this does the same thing as dragging. So it's up to you which method you want to use. You could either just drag it or you could place linked, right? Now, notice when you do that, you will get a message up here that says basically to commit or to cancel what you've just did. So what we're going to do is commit, and that's it. Now notice that we have the image on our canvas. Now remember, we spoke about the general tools that's located over here, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drag this out just like how we dragged out the other tools. And to get a bit more, to arrange this in a nicer way, I'm going to click this expand button here to expand the tool like that. This is a personal preference because I like to see the tools together like this. Now, each of these tools have particular purposes, and when you hover over them, they will actually give you a quick synopsis of what they do. Now, at least for the 2020 version, so it might not do for your version. It also tells you the shortcut of the tool. All right, so I'm going to now place another image here, which is the sky. Now, the last time I used the place linked command, this time I'm going to use a drag and drop command. So here is my folder here, and let's say I'm going to use this sky. I'm going to drag it and release, and I'm going to commit that change. So now I have two images. Now, in order to move my images around, I need to be on the move tool, which is located here. That's my move tool. All right, so I'm going to make sure my move tool is activated, and notice that I can move this around, and I can also move this other layer around. Now, if I try to click this, it's really not clicking. It's still giving me the top layer. And the reason for that is because I am now locked to this layer here. So now, I'm not able to just select it directly. Now in Photoshop, I want you to notice what happens on this side of my screen, which is here. This image is on that layer, and this image is on that layer. Now remember, this is our layers panel, right? Remember, we spoke about panels, which are the specific tools. And this is exactly what the layers panel does. It helps to keep our content organized. Now, you can clearly see that there is actually a highlight around this layer here. So that is how you know that this layer is the active layer. And naturally so, when I try to move it around, I'm only able to move this active layer. I'm not able to click on this layer behind here. Now to change the active layer, what I would need to do is I would need to now highlight this layer below. Now notice when I do that, you can see how the highlight box switches between them. Now, depending on your version of Photoshop, you might not have that highlight box. Doesn't matter. Once this layer is activated, now if I try and move, it moves the layer below. And if I try and move the top layer, well, same thing. I'm unable to select it because I have already highlighted this layer here. And I know that it's highlighted because it has this darker color that is there. Alright, great. So now that I have these two layers arranged, you might be wondering, well, but suppose I had carried in my sky first and I wanted the sky to be behind the building. Well, how you do that is you actually just rearrange the layers. How it is now, we have the sky layer, and then below the sky layer we have the downtown Kingston layer. Below that layer we have our background, which is white, and you can see it represented in the images here, right? We can clearly see that the downtown image is on that layer and it is below the sky layer, which is here. So right away you realize that if I wanted to put the downtown layer above, I would need to swap these two layers around, and to do that all I need to do is to click and hold and drag, and notice you get that little blue line there to tell you that it's now there. So now this layer is on top, and you are now able to see how you manipulate the layers. Now for our purposes, we want the sky layer to be on top, and also we want to call it something that we can recognize. So we're going to double click on the name and type sky. There we go. So now we can see that it's called sky, and we have a downtown layer that is here. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to start to manipulate the sky layer in the background. So I'm going to actually turn off my sky, my sunset sky, by clicking this little eyeball there. So now it's turned off. It's still there, but it's just off. Alright, great. So we have our sky there. Next, what we're going to do is kind of crop this so that it matches with our image. So to do that, we're going to head over to our general tools, and we're going to use the crop icon, which is here. Now crop is a general tool. Pretty much most programs have a crop tool, and we're going to click it like that. And once we click it, notice that we have these highlights here. Now before we start to move this, I want you to start to notice that any tool that you click on in this window here, whichever one is activated, it shows properties for those tools at the top. So now that my crop tool is highlighted, I'm seeing options here that has to do with my crop tool. If for example I highlighted my move tool, then notice that the options up here change to options for move, and so forth for all these different tools. Every time I switch to a different tool, the option at the top changes. So anyway, I'm going to choose my crop tool, and what I'm going to do is just to drag in these areas here, and then I'm going to commit those changes by clicking the yes like that. Okay, so I'm going to click that. Good. So now it is there. So I'm going to zoom in now by holding Control and mouse wheel. Now notice I can zoom all the way in, and if you continue to zoom in, you will notice that Photoshop starts to put these little squares, and these squares are actually pixels, which you can see is what ultimately makes up an image. When you're this close, they look quite blocky and horrible, but the more you zoom out, you realize that, hey, these squares eventually come together to show you that image, right? That is pretty cool. Now, the first thing we want to do with our image now is we definitely want to remove this sky so that we can put the other sky there. So the first thing we want to do is to manipulate this layer. Now you need to select the layer that you are currently manipulating. Right now we have the sky layer active, and we know it's active because we can see this brown area there. And the idea is that we don't want it to be the active layer. So we're going to click the downtown layer. Now this layer is active. Good. So now before we can start to cut this layer using one of our tools, we need to change this layer to a particular layer type. Now you notice on each layer there are these little symbols that's located here. So on this downtown layer I have a little symbol there, and on this sky layer I have a little symbol there, right? And these symbols tell you the type of layers that they are. Now by default, whenever you carry an image into Photoshop, it by default makes it into what's called a smart layer, and it does that by default, and we're going to see why it does that as we go further into the tutorial. But this is how you know that these layers are smart layers, right? Now the thing about smart layers is that you can't edit them. So if we wanted to cut the sky using one of our tools, in this case we're gonna choose the right, so we're going to use this tool here, and this tool will allow us to cut out the sky. Now this tool here is called our lasso tool, and I want you to notice something important about these tools. Now for each of these tools, you notice that there's a little kind of a triangular icon right there. You can kind of see it again here, and you can see it also on the lasso tool, right? So think of a lasso tool as a way to select something, right? And we use the lasso tool to select an area that we want to manipulate or delete or change in some way. Now these little triangle here tells us that there are other types of lasso tool, and to access them what we do is click and hold. So if you click and hold, you will see, and I'm left clicking and holding, you will see that you have a regular lasso tool, a polygonal lasso tool, and a magnetic lasso tool, right? And the interesting thing about this is that you can see that this lasso tool is the one that is currently in use, which is the polygonal lasso tool, and you know that because it has that little highlight right there. Great. So we're on the lasso tool now. Basically what we want to do is try to cut out particular elements of the tool, but if we try to click here, it will not allow us to cut the tool. We have to do what's called rasterizing the layer. The reason for that is that you're not able to edit images that you directly carry into Photoshop, and you can think of this as a kind of safety precaution. When you place that image in Photoshop and it gives it the smart layer, it's kind of a safety net that protects this image from being manipulated. Now to allow this image to be manipulated, you need to right click on the layer. So make sure the layer is highlighted first, and you're going to right click and you're going to choose rasterize layer. Now when you choose that, notice that the icon is now gone, and now you can make edits to the layer. So now you have to be cautious because any changes you make now will actually edit the image. Now I could try out this first lasso tool here, right? And your mileage might vary, but I guarantee most of us will not choose this tool. Let's try it out first. We can always undo. So if we wanted to use this lasso tool now, we'll have to now drag and try and manually cut this thing out. And you can see I'm using the mouse to do this, and that's really not gonna work. Wow. I mean, this is a horrible cut, but I'm still gonna try to use this lasso tool. Alright, great. I'm gonna come all the way back here and all the way down, and when I get to here, I'm gonna just release. Now once I release, notice I get this is called your marching ants, and it kind of looks like marching ants. You can kind of see them there, and this is telling you that I have used the lasso tool to select the image like this. Now if you tried out this lasso tool, you'd realize that it's quite difficult to try and select the sky, especially using a mouse. So this isn't going to work. So to change this, I can now undo. Now in Photoshop, to undo, you use another panel called the history panel. That's here. So far we've been using the layers panel, so let's see what the history panel does. So the history panel gives us a track of all of the changes that we have made thus far. So you realize that the last thing we did was to rasterize the layer, then we used the lasso tool. So we're just going to go up by one by clicking on it, and there it is. It basically undid what we just did. All right, great. So this time we're going to try out a different lasso tool. So I'm going to select this and we're going to use the polygonal lasso tool. All right, so let's give this another swing. Now the polygonal lasso tool, it does what it says. It's kind of like a polygon. So this isn't so bad. This is actually great. Now, when you're using this tool, you might realize, oh, I really need to zoom in here. And if you try to use the mouse wheel, it doesn't zoom. Even for some of the versions of Photoshop, if you hold Alt and mouse wheel, it will zoom. But some versions might not zoom. So what you would use is the plus and minus key. So I'm going to use the plus key here. Now you realize that you can actually go right in now, and this polygonal lasso tool gives you a nice kind of angular cut, which is great. So now I can really zoom in and try and cut these elements out, right? Now, this is great when cutting straight edges like buildings, because I can simply, I'm going to do a rough kind of cut here now, but I can simply use this to gauge the edges of buildings. However, when it comes to cutting foliage, that's another story, because now if I wanted to cut this out, I would have to, you know, click all of these angles here, and it gets a little crazy. So I'm going to cancel that by pressing escape. Let's try out another lasso tool here. And the reason I'm showing you these is because these are going to become very important. This is how you put context in your architectural drawings. You might want to insert a car or cut out a tree. Chances are you're going to be using one of these tools. So let's try the magnetic lasso tool. Let's see what that does. Now to give that a good swing, I'm going to go to the side of the building here, and I'm going to click and release once. I'm not holding down on the button. I just click and release to activate it. Now while I'm moving the mouse, this is actually automatically detecting the edges of these structures here, and I can still zoom in. And what it's doing is actually trying to detect the edges. Now I'm not clicking, I'm just actually moving the mouse, and Photoshop is trying to say, okay, I think the edge is there. So you can imagine this can kind of make this process a bit quicker. Oh, if you accidentally highlight an edge that you don't want, you're going to press backspace. Backspace is kind of like undo for doing lasso tool selections. There we go. And I can really just quickly highlight a section here like that. Let's zoom out a bit. And I would come all the way back around and where I started, and notice that I get a little plus, a little circle there. I'm going to click, and then it's closed, and now it's highlighted. So that is another way you can use to select. Now the truth is that when you need to cut out elements, the ultimate way to do that is to actually use all, if not most, methods, right? So what do I mean by that? Well, okay, I'm going to first use the polygonal lasso tool. This is my favorite tool. And the first thing I'm going to do is to try and cut these mountains first. I'm not going to try to cut everything in one. I'm going to try and cut the mountains first. So here I go. And I'm going to zoom in, right? Now remember, the polygonal lasso tool, you have to click to confirm the positions. There we go. Now you might say, well, maybe I want to use the magnetic lasso tool. There are actually other tools you could use, but for this purpose, we're just going to cut these out using these tools. Now I know it might seem a bit daunting at first, and you can hear the amount of times my mouse is clicking, but you really get used to it after a while. And what I'm doing here, I'm using the plus and minus keys to zoom in, zoom out, to see where I am, and to zoom in again. Now, this is the trick. I'm not going to try to make one cut and cut everything. Nope. What I'm going to do is I'm only going to cut certain parts. So when I reach near to the edge of the mountain, what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to go straight up, come around, back down, and then find back where I started. And I can know that because you see the little circle there. And that is now selected. Now when this area is selected, you'll know it has the marching ants. You'll see it around it. Now obviously we haven't finished cutting out the rest of the building, but my suggestion is not to try and cut everything in one go. So I'm going to cut up to this point here. I'm going to ensure that on my layers tab I am on the correct layer, which is supposed to be the downtown layer, and then I'm going to hit the delete key, and then that's going to delete the sky there. Alright, great. So now it's deleted. Now I still have the selection here, so to deselect I'm going to right click and hit deselect. Alright, great. So now I need to continue my journey cutting out the rest of these elements here. So you might want to choose what tool you want to use. I'm going to continue with the polygonal lasso tool, and I'm going to continue cutting these guys here. Now when you're clicking, you want to not try to double click, because when you double click you actually close the loop. So what you want to try and do is not double click too often. Let's deselect that. So let's go. Oops, I might have, you notice that I accidentally cut the plan, so I'm going to backspace and go around. Now the truth is that you don't need to get every single element, because this is going to be pretty small when you zoom out of the picture. So it's up to you to choose what areas you think you need to highlight. Now if I'm running out of paper, I can move the mouse right and Photoshop will automatically move the image for me. Just ensure that you don't click. I'm going to hit the plus key on the keyboard, and that will let me zoom in, and I'm just going to continue cutting these guys out. Now the polygonal lasso tool is great, especially for architectural drawings, because you have a lot of angles here. Now as you can imagine, if you accidentally close the loop here, you're going to lose all of this work, and this is why I always suggest that you don't try to trace everything one time, but you try to get piece by piece. So I'm going to just go around, come back around, and close, and then I'm going to hit delete again to delete that. So I do this and I save, because I don't want to lose all of that selections that I just did. Now the building becomes pretty easy because they contain mainly straight lines. So I'm going to cut this like that. I'm going to just cut just like that. Now you're going to want to try to be as detailed as possible. I'm kind of just rushing ahead because I'm previewing this example for you guys. All
right. So pretty much at this point we're just going to be cutting cutting out the different areas here. Some areas we're going to cut, some areas we can avoid. And notice how when I'm cutting it in different sections. I'm not trying to cut everything in one go, and then you probably mess it up and then you have to start again. Notice that I'm cutting it one section at a time, and then I close the loop, delete it, and then I cut another section and I close the loop and delete it. So that is the idea, to cut this guy out like this, right? And sometimes this is the best way to cut out these things. When you try to use the automated tool, it doesn't cut it in the way that you want, and sometimes you're ending up lose so much time trying to automate this when you could have just cut it yourself, right? So you can see me just cutting around most of these areas here, cutting around the lampposts and around the rest of the building until we have everything all done.
Basically represents that the background is transparent, and this is great because now I can turn on my sky layer and I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to use my move tool, and of course I can move it around, but of course the sky layer is in front and I want it to be behind. And remember how this works. Currently this,
so what you notice is that when I cut this out originally, you notice that my background is white, and the reason for that is that it's showing it is showing this white layer behind this background here.
It was, we got rid of section by section. Now, if I turn off my background layer, notice I will get these checker boxes, which basically represents that the background is transparent. And
yes, Rahim.
Yes, sir. I was just wondering, could we use different images apart from the ones that we're displaying right now for our Photoshop
No,
assignment?
I want us to stick. I gave multiple options in the folder. So it's not just one. I think I put about 4 for you to choose from.
Oh,
right?
okay then. Excellent.
Right. All right.
this is great because now I can turn on my sky layer. And I'm going to highlight it. And I'm going to use my move tool, and of course I can move it around, but of course the sky layer is in front and I want it to be behind. And remember how this works. Currently this layer is on top. Ideally I want this layer to be below my downtown layer because I want it to show up behind the areas that I cut out. So to do that, I'm going to just drag this down. There we go. Then I'm going to use the move tool and kind of position this so that it's a bit nicer. It is a bit small, so what I want to do is I want to scale this up. Now to scale this up, you should be able to see these control boxes here, but in case you're using a Photoshop that you don't see these boxes, you need to enable it. And if you remember how this works, remember whatever tool you select, the properties for those tools are located up here. So with the move tool selected, you want to select this tool that says show transform controls. And what that does is it turns on these guys here so you can see them. Mine is enabled by default, but yours might not be. So I'm gonna make sure that is there, and then that will allow me to resize this. So I'm gonna actually make this larger. And you don't want to skew the image. So if you're using an old version of Photoshop, you need to hold shift so you don't skew the image. All right, great. So I'm going to position this so that it's like maybe like right there. That looks pretty good. All right, and I'm going to commit that by clicking the tick up here. All right, so I've now done a sky replacement here, and that takes care of this section. Now, when you do this, you might decide that maybe I don't like this sky, I want to use a different sky. Well, all you have to do is just find back the images of the skies that you have. So in this case, let's try this sky here. All right, so what do? Well, I just need to drag it into Photoshop. Let's use that method again, and voila. Now, of course, it's behind here because if you look, I actually have this layer behind my downtown layer. And I'm going to choose yes to commit that. All right, great. So now I just need to adjust this sky. I'm going to use this here. And, you know, I'm kind of liking this sky. This sky is pretty nice. It's pretty nice. All right, good. But you can choose any sky that you would like. Now, what we want to do next is we want to put the car in.
Okay, so
we need
now
to go to the folder that has the vehicles. So here we go. Now you can pick any one of these vehicles. I think this one will work best. So, I mean, actually any one of these could work, but I'm going to use let's use the buggy. So again, I'm going to drag this in. There it is. Of course, it comes behind my downtown layer. I want it to be on top, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to drag it on top. I'm going to switch it off for now. Let's get a little organized here. I had 2 skies, so I'm going to call this sky 2. There we go. So I have sky 1 and sky 2. I can actually just swap them out when I'm ready. All right, that might be something you might like. All right, let's look on this car that we have here. Now you have to make sure that I'm actually on the car layer, so I'm going to select the car there. Now the first thing is that the car layer it does not have a transparent background. It has this white background, so we need to get rid of it. And we know how to do that already because we remember the lasso tools that we used on the city. All right, now before we can start manipulating this layer, we know that, oops, Photoshop will take this as a smart layer. And we know that we can't edit smart layers, but let's spend some time and talk about that a bit. You know, why would Photoshop, like, when you insert a new object, it would make it into a smart layer, and a layer that you can't edit? Well, just to give you a quick example, right? I'm gonna drag in the other vehicle. So let's, for example, I'm gonna drag this other vehicle in like that. There we go. And I'm gonna commit that, and you can see that this now has a new layer. Now, if I make this really small, and I know that it's small, if I zoom in, I'm using the control and mouse wheel to zoom in here. That's pretty small, and if you look at it, you say, oh well, it even looks like the quality is kind of lost there, because, you know, this one was way sharper. Now, of course, I can just resize it like that and choose commit, and no problem. All right, it's now sharp again. Now, it's sharp because as a smart object, Photoshop preserves all of the data within this image. Now, let's say it was not a smart image, a smart layer. So remember how to convert a layer to a regular layer. You're going to right click it and choose rasterize layer. All right, great. No difference here. However, if I make this small, once I commit, and I say, oops, I don't want it to be small, let me make it large again. It was a bit larger, and I commit. Then you might notice that it's way more blurry, and the reason for that is when you made it small, you totally squashed the pixels. I mean, think about how the pixels work, right? Remember, when you zoom in, you can actually eventually see the pixels, right? So let me just kind of zoom out a little bit. Right, so remember, when you zoom in, you actually see the pixels here. And what happens when you make something smaller, you are forcing the pixels into a smaller amount of pixel density. So before, when the image was much larger, the pixels that made up the tire, for example, this area, was that amount of pixels. But when you made the image smaller, all of this now has to fit in a smaller size. But guess what? The size of the squares doesn't change. So what does that mean? These squares are going to have to store more information in them, and the squares aren't getting any smaller. So what is essentially happening is you are crushing the image and losing detail, because when you enlarge the image, you would have already lost those that detail in those pixels. All right, so now that that example is out of the way, let me zoom out a bit. We're going to get rid of this car here, and now we kind of understand why Photoshop uses this smart layer by default, because it doesn't want you to change the size of the image and rotate it and do all sorts of things to it and lose detail. So you have to specifically say, okay, Photoshop, I want to rasterize. Once you do that, you know you have to be very careful, because when you change anything, you're not going to get it back. But in order to change something, in order to cut out an object, you have to rasterize it first before you're able to cut stuff out. Now, we're going to try out another tool here. We could use the polygonal lasso tool, our favorite tool, but because of the nature of this car, because it's on a white background, we're going to try another tool. So we're going to try the quick selection tool. Now, the quick selection tool is actually a sub tool of the magic one. So remember, once you see this little triangular element here, you're going to click and hold, release, and then you're going to choose the quick selection tool. It's here. Now, how does this tool work? Well, the quick selection tool, what I'm going to do is select this white area and drag. And notice I'm clicking and holding and dragging, and the quick selection tool is actually finding all these edges for me automatically, and it's actually going ahead and finding them. So you might say, oh, why didn't we use this tool all along? Look at that. Even before I reach the end, it has already selected just the white areas. Now, in case it did not select all your white areas, for example, notice that on the top of my car here, I'm going to pan over a little bit by holding the space bar, it has accidentally selected some of the red. So if I delete now, then naturally it's going to actually delete that part of the car, which we don't want. So I'm going to undo that. So what we have to do is deselect this area here. Now to deselect, you're going to hold, and I want to watch to show you this. If I hold Alt, notice that the symbol changes to a minus. If I release Alt, the symbol is a plus. So what you want to do is you want to hold Alt and you want to select the sections that you want to keep. So I'm going to click on hold and drag, and notice that the quick selection is trying to snap to these edges. There we go. I'm going to pan over some more, and I'm going to hold Alt again and add this selection here. So this is another method that you can use to highlight and cut stuff out. You can use the quick selection tool, and in this case it works fine. But if we try to use it on shapes that are a bit random, or shapes where the colors are very close, it's not going to work. Alright, so I'm holding Alt and mouse wheel to zoom out. Alright, so let me zoom in a little bit, and oh look, see, you can see that the quick selection would have deleted this section. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to hold Alt and just try to get this in. There we go. Let's get that little part there. I'm going to do the same for the side of the light. I'm going to hold Alt and just kind of brush the edges here, hoping that Photoshop will recognize these edges. Now when you do it first, it might not look like it's snapped, but as soon as you release the mouse button, it will try and find its way. There we go. There we go. Alright. So let me zoom out now. Alright, that should be it. Now, of course, if I hit delete, you can see that it will delete all of these areas here. Now, you could have used the polygonal lasso tool or even the magnetic lasso tool to highlight the areas around it. But I just wanted to show you the quick select tool because that's also a pretty good tool. Alright, I'm going to right click and choose deselect, and I'm going to use my move tool. If you remember, that's that tool right here. And when I use the move tool, I'm able to resize. So I'm going to resize this now. Alright, now while I'm resizing this, I'm going to position it, and this is where your architectural skills come into play. Let me move this over here. You want to make sure that you get the size right, so you got to watch your scale, and the angle is a little off here, so I'm going to just a tad. Okay, let me put this a little over there. There we go. All right, and now here's the thing. Remember, we made the car smaller, so once we commit now, we have essentially crushed all of those pixels into a smaller space. So once we commit, those pixels that we have crushed are gone. So now would be a time to ensure that, you know, the car is okay. So I'm going to choose okay there. All right, good to go. Now let's look at some other tools that we have here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use the warp tool to kind of fix the perspective a bit. Now if you look closely, you will realize that, well, the car's perspective is kind of going this way, but the road is kind of going that way. So it kind of looks a little bit off, right? And this is where the perspective correction tools come in, which is great for architectural use, right? So to change that perspective tool, now you're going to go to image. Well, make sure that the car is highlighted because that is the layer that you want to actually warp. So once the car layer is highlighted, you're going to go to edit. You're going to go down to transform, and you're going to go down to warp. And what warp will do, it will change the box around it to these dots. And what you can do is actually drag these dots around. Now you have to kind of guesstimate where they would be in order for the perspective to roll out. And what I'm what I'm doing is actually clicking, holding and dragging to get this car looking like it's on the road. There we go. All right, I'm gonna choose yes to commit. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to do a shadow, and we also want to do some reflections, right? So now the idea of let's do the shadow first. And what we can do to get the shadow, architecturally we know that the shadow would be somewhere in this section here, right? And that would be what the shadow would be like. Now we could actually try and draw in the shadow, but we're going to use some tools that Photoshop has available to us to get the shadows done. Now what we're going to do, our game plan is that we want to take this car, duplicate it. All right, that's probably a horrible image of the car, but you get the idea. And then we want to color it black, and then place this black image of the car underneath the car so it looks like a shadow. So that's the plan that we want to do. So first thing we need to do is we need to make a copy of this car. Now to do that, we need, remember, this is the car layer here, and we need 2 copies of that car layer. Now to do that, what we do is we can right click, and then we can choose the option to duplicate layer. Now we want to name this layer car shadow. That's great. Now you might be saying, wait a minute, where is the car? And it's actually directly above the existing car, right? So if I use my move tool, make sure that is highlighted, and I'm on the car shadow layer, when I move, you will see that it has dragged out another car. Now we're going to use a technique called blending options to get this car to be filled black, right? Now to access your blending options on your layer, you're going to right click, you're going to say blending options, and you're going to wait for that window to pop up. Now once that window pops up, we're going to go to color overlay, and we're going to check that checkbox, and notice that once we check that checkbox, the car is actually now filled. We're going to click on it to highlight that color overlay to see the options. And what this layer style actually does is it really just allows you to fill that layer with a color, one flat color. So in this case, we want to fill it with black. We're going to choose OK. All right, now that's great. Now, of course, we want this to now act as a shadow, so we need to basically like squash it all the way down so that it's nice and flat like that. Now to do that, we're going to try out another tool. So we're going to go to edit, and then we're going to go down to let's go down to, we are going to go down to transform, and we're going to go to distort. Right, the last time we went to warp, but this time we're going to go to distort. And what this allows us to do is to grab these edges and actually distort the image in weird, funky ways. So what we want to do is to kind of distort the image like that, kind of like that, and like that. So now it's starting to look kind of like a car. Well, a bit. Let's carry this way. Let's carry this back. All right, now, of course, we need to commit this, so we want to make it look kind of like what we want. And then we're going to commit that. Now remember, once you commit it, you can't change it again. So you want to make sure you do that. And if you're not sure about it, then you want to use your history, and you want to go back up one step. Now, of course, the shadow layer needs to be below the car layer, naturally, because the shadow is below the car. So we're going to carry that down. All right, great. So now the shadow is below the car, and next we perhaps want to make this very transparent, because right now it looks a bit too hard. And to do that, we're going to go to the opacity for the car shadow layer, and we're going to get the opacity all the way down there. Okay, now this settings we can always adjust that a little later. All right, it's coming there, but not quite yet. Next, what we want to do is we want to kind of blur this shadow a little bit. So to do that, we're going to go to filters. Now filters is an interesting element, set of options in Photoshop, and what we're going to do is start to explore what they do. Now filters really manipulate the pixels on screen to do various effects. Now in this case, we want to blur the shadow layer, so make sure the shadow layer is highlighted, the car shadow layer, and we're going to go to filter, we're going to go to blur, and we're going to try out, let's try a Gaussian blur. And what that is it's actually using this slider bar here to adjust whatever layer we currently have selected. And what it is doing is that it's making it more blurry, right? So the more we increase this slider bar here, is the more blurry that shadow becomes. It's almost gone now, so let's carry it back a bit. Yeah, there we go. So it's an overcast day, so we don't have a nice hard shadow, so that is fine. So we're going to choose OK. All right, so now we have a shadow. So that's without the shadow, and this is with the shadow. So the shadow definitely helps to ground it. Next, we want to have the reflection, and guess what? We're going to use the same approach. We're going to take the car, flip it upside down, and that will be the reflection. So we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to take the car layer, and we're going to right click and choose duplicate, and we're going to call this reflection. All right, so again, if I'm on the reflection layer and I drag this out, you will see that it's copied. Now in this case, what we want to do is actually mirror the car upside down, and to do that, all we need to do is to, I call it over squash, but we need to like squash this down. And if you're using the new version of Photoshop, you need to hold shift in order to squash. Hold shift while you are trying to resize, and we're going to go all the way down until we come on the other side, and voila, we have a copy that is flipped. Now the trick with this now is if we put it in position, it's not going to quite fit. So what we need to do, let's commit that change. We need to perhaps use the warp tool. So we're going to go to edit and transform and go to the warp option. And with that selected, what we want to do is kind of warp this so that only the tires will touch. So that's the tricky part of this. What you want is the tires to touch. There we go. All right, we're going to commit that. And then of course, we're going to put this reflection layer below the shadow layer. Let's put it below the shadow layer. That's much better. And then we're going to make the reflection layer, we're going to let the opacity be lower, just like the shadow layer. So we're going to adjust that down. There we go. And we want to get it ever so slightly. All right. So basically, this is where we're at now. All right, so we can see the reflection. Now what we want to do just for kicks is that we want to add a little bit of motion blur to the car to let it look like it's driving, you know, really fast, you know. And to do that, we're going to use yet another filter. So what we're going to do is we could add a motion blur to this car. Let's try and see if that works. So we're going to select the car and we're going to go to filter, blur, and we're going to go to, this time we are going to choose motion blur. Now we're going to get presented with options once again, and you can kind of see now that the entire car is blurred, and the blurriness is really controlled by that. And the angle, you can kind of see the car is being blurred at an angle that is controlled here. So what we're going to do is we can try to increase this. Nah, we can also try to change the angle. I mean, this is kind of okay, but what happened is that the entire car is perhaps too blurred, so I'm going to cancel that. What we can do is we're going to use the same trick again. We're going to duplicate the car layer. So to do that, we're going to right click and we're going to choose duplicate, and we're going to call this car blur motion. And yet again, this is another copy, but this time we will add the blur to this layer. So we're going to add blur, and we're going to choose motion blur. Now, of course, this time it's added to this object here, but that's fine because we're not using this. And we can actually just put this object directly over this object. Then what we're going to do is we're going to use a new tool that we very popular, but we haven't used it to the current time, which is the eraser tool, which is that tool right there. So we're going to pick the eraser tool, and what we're going to do is, well, remember how this works. So the options for the eraser tools are located up top. Remember, any button you select here, the options for that button is located up top. And what we want to do with this eraser tool here is let the size of the brush be big. So we're going to pick the size, and we're going to make that big, even more big, maybe a tad more. Whoa, no, that's too big. All right, great. Next, we perhaps want to change the flow, which is basically the strength of the eraser. So we're going to empty that all the way down to maybe like 10. And then what we're going to do is we are going to erase half of the car. So let's use that eraser tool here, and what we're actually erasing is the car blur layer. And under it is the car layer, so it kind of gives the impression that it's moving. Alright, so when you're all done, this is what your image should look like. So good luck and have fun.
Alright. So guys, that is going to do it for our exercise 1. Alright. Alright. So are you guys still with me? Are you asleep?
Hanging in there, sir.
You're hanging in there. I know these working
Yes, sir.
right. These working sessions, we're gonna try to kind of cut it down to maybe hour and a half. Some of them might vary. These early sessions might be a little bit filled because I kind of go in detail because some of us seen these tools for the first time. But as we go further in the semester now, it's going to be more of tips and tricks after you know the basic tools. So as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to post this so that you guys are able to use it to finish up. And you're going to submit this to me. I don't need the Photoshop file. All I need is a JPEG file, right? Just as a reminder, right? To submit this work, you go to the class website, which is where did it go? Which is here. There we go. Let's go to computing, right? So you should be on Intro to Digital Design, and here are the exercises: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're submitting exercise 1. So you click on exercise 1, and that's the exercise. This is how you access the files, and this is the big submit button. You just do that, and that's how you submit the work. All right, guys. All right. To check your grades, you can go to the check grade section. Remember, as a bonus tip, if you want to find out how the work will be graded, look in the check grade section and take a look on the criteria up the top, right? So if I scroll across to exercise 1, you can see where, you can see what I'm grading for. So you can make sure that you have it. All right, guys. So that's it for DDM this week. I will see you again all the way in next week. Remember, use the timeline up the top so you can remember when stuff is due. You can know what's coming next on which day. All right. All right. Next week,
Sir?
we'll continue with. Yeah. Go ahead.
For this class, you said that it's due at the end of tomorrow, right?
I mean, I don't like what you say at the end of tomorrow.
No, the reason why I asked is because for this class and also for 3DM, I'm fourth year, and all of my 3D and DDM lectures clash except for the 2 in the afternoon. So the 2 to 4 for 3D and
Right,
this
right, right. So it's a bit
everything
of a,
clashes.
yeah, man.
Yeah, so
So
to
that is no problem. It can be, you can send it to me tomorrow.
for both of them.
But I would just like it to be phrased. Oh, so we hand this in today, but it might end up being tomorrow, and it's no
Okay.
problem. Yeah, that sounds nicer than the end of tomorrow.
Okay, so thank you.
All right, guys. So yeah. So I know that it's late. So usually for the working sessions, I will give it until tomorrow for you to hand it in. Guys, I mark them same time because this is, as I said, it's not that hard. Most of this is just a class exercise. So that's it. Just try and get it done when you can.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, man.
Sir, this is Kalia Powell speaking.
Oh, right. What's up?
Okay, so sir, remember this morning in our first session, I was like speaking to you about the laptop issue that I was having,
All right.
and the fact that the Mr. Neville wouldn't be available.
Right.
Sir, how are you saying I can go about completing this assignment? Because it's a case where my laptop, like, sir, don't even turn on. Like I would like press the power button and the keyboard will turn on, and then the laptop is just blinking. Like it's not turning
so you have
on,
a real
sir. So
challenging technical
yeah.
issue. Well, here what you can do
Pardon?
for me. Here what you can do. Until you get Mr. Campbell, see if you can make it to the lab tomorrow. Because you can use the lab computer. This is assuming that you can get your best friend, which hopefully is located in your class, to just use their computer so you can get the class exercise, not assignment, because I don't want we're thinking of this as homework, right? At least until you can get the laptop fixed. So see if you can use the. But remember, you have until tomorrow, so just use the the lab computer. See if you can get through with that. All right.
Sir, where is the lab again?
Third floor, right? 4C10. All right. I know most of us don't really use the lab because we have our own computer, but it's there as a good backup. All right.
Sir, and Photoshop is downloaded on the lab.
Yeah, Photoshop is on the lab computers. Just warning, it's gonna be a bit old, but the buttons are in the same place. All right. They don't have any AI features, but it should still work. All right. And guess what? If that still don't work out, just talk to me. Send me a message, send me an email. Let me try and work with you guys. My aim is to help you guys to pass. That's my objective. So,
sir, I have another question. I'm sorry.
Ahead. No problem.
Okay, so,
ask away.
Sir, you said that it's due tomorrow, right?
Right.
Like, please give me like a time tomorrow, honestly, because currently we're working on because we have a crit this week,
yes.
and tomorrow we have studio, and we're trying to prepare like different drawings and models and stuff to be assessed by our teacher for the upcoming crit. So sir, we really got a lot doing. Obviously we can't only prioritize studio, we have to prioritize this class as well. However, because studio is tomorrow, we're kind of slightly have a lot on our plate, and I just wanted to give like a cutoff time where we kind of have to drop studio and complete this assignment to the best of our ability, because this is when it is due.
All right, fine. Couple words there. I don't like how it sounds. Assignment make it sound like this big thing. I like the word class exercise, because that way it sounds like, oh, it's just a small thing, man. It's nothing too stressful. Sometimes the words you use can, I don't want to give any reason to add additional stress. I would say that in terms of the cutoff, I mean, just get you guys have studio tomorrow. Studio finishes at like what, 6, right? Well, studio never finishes, but you should be out of the oh, you should be um not in front of your lecturers at about 6 or so, no? So, right? Am I right?
Sir, you asking because we're gonna be
So,
assessed and stuff, and it kind of takes a lot. Studio officially ends at 6. However, I'd honestly give it till 7 because
well,
that's really when,
well,
yeah.
hear what? Just get it to me tomorrow at whatever time. Like, it's not about the time for hard and fast deadlines is coming, but I'm not going to hold you to the class exercises. Just get it to me tomorrow. The key thing is that when I mark them, like whatever is there in my submission box is what I mark. You understand? And just just get it to me within tomorrow. All right? Even if it's in the night, no problem. Cool?
Okay,
But
sir. Thank you so much.
right. So, of course, my advice would be to just spend a little time. Well, it's almost 8 o'clock now. Right, just spend a little time and just wrap it up. Some of you might have already started, but maybe the video run leave you. Just spend the extra 20 minutes and just tidy up the car and do the shadow thing. And by the time you guys get around to a part where you don't remember, just refresh the website. I'll try to get the video up there as quick as possible so that you guys can just get it out of your way. For those of you who have technical problems, just get it to me as soon as you can tomorrow. All right? And we'll work with that. Cool?
Okay, sir.
All right, no problem. All right. Any
Sir?
more question? Yeah.
How did you say we submit again?
Just go to the class website. All your answers are on the class website. When you head to the class site, by the way, you register for the class site already? You click this red button at the top.
Yes, sir.
Good. So you're familiar with the site then. Just scroll down, see? It says DDM course assessments. Let's look for exercise 1. All right?
Okay, sir.
All right. Next question. Anybody else? All right, guys. I know studio is tomorrow. So I'm hoping that we spend today to get DDM out. You get Wednesday at least from DDM. So I hope that balance kind of works out for everybody. All right. So
excuse me, sir.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I selected the red button at the top for the registration. However, I'm not seeing my name on the class list.
Yeah, man. Give it a little while, because when you submit it, I have to kind of transfer it over. All right.
All right, no problem.
Yeah, man. So you should see it pop up. All right. All right. Don't forget, guys, that the little activity we did last week, for those of you that are planning to get computers, this list is good for the whole year. There are people that are in 4th year that still refer back to this list that they did. Sorry, not 4th year. What do you call it? 2nd semester, right? So there are people that are in summer, them go abroad and do work and travel, and then make some money and them say, all right, I'm gonna buy a computer for CSA now, and they run back to this list from this class activity. So I have found that it has been very useful. So remember that it's here. Don't waste your money if you're trying to figure out what computer to buy. We did this class activity. It is for everybody. All right, guys. The one that is in green, good to go. Red, avoid. Okay, if you can avoid it. All right. Any more questions, guys? Any more messages? No.
No, sir.
All right. Well, with that, I say good night. Good luck with your studios tomorrow. See you next week again. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Take it easy.
Have a good night, sir.
You too.